you should always follow best practice guides about best time of day to post on social media. That is absolutely not true, and I'm going to talk you through why that is. Hello and welcome to Engage and Thrive, also known as EAT, your coffee catch-up with me, your host, Taelon, where we will go through common problems and hurdles that come up in business, marketing and advertising and try and demystify them. I know firsthand how complicated and confusing it can seem with all the different acronyms and all the things to do in business. So let me try and help you be better in business. First things first, let's start with grabbing a coffee. The first thing to say is I have an absolute pet peeve about all these guides you see and infographics about the best time of day to post, because the reality is whose best time of day? What time zone are they talking about? What geographical location are they talking about? What industry? What audience? It's just irrelevant. So unless all these guides are based on data that is related to your audience, I would say ignore them. And I know that sounds like a massive statement, but I'm going to talk you through how you can look at your data and utilize what you're doing to understand your best time of day to post. As always, let's go through vocab. The first one is CTR, so click-through rate. This is one to look at in terms of anything you're posting on social media. What's the click-through from that post? Now, some of the platforms won't have a click-through. So if you're posting on Instagram, you don't necessarily have a click-through on that reel or on that post. But that's just one metric that you might be considering and vocab that would come up when you're talking about your best time of day to post. Another one is impressions and views. So again, for each platform, they have different ways of showcasing this. Are you looking at the views on your post, or are you looking at the impressions that were caused by your post? This will vary on the content type. Another one is your engagement metrics. So this can be shares, saves, sends, comments, reactions, all of those kind of interactive pieces. Those are all engagements on your content. So again, you may want to look at your engagement when we go further down in terms of what the purpose of your post is, and therefore which of those is a metric to think about. Another one is A/B testing. So again, we covered this off before, but you may have 2 pieces of content or 4 or whatever it is, and you're posting them to see what performs best. Today, we're going to go through 3 key takeaways, and the takeaways are basically ways of looking at what you're doing to understand your best time of day. So if you work through that list, that should give you your personalized time of day that you should be posting for each platform for your content, depending on your audience. So number 1 is your audience. I talk about this so much, and I will never get bored of talking about it. But the first thing to think about before you're even considering the time of day is understanding your target audience. So I mentioned this before, but as an activity that you can do is thinking about the day in the life of your target audience. So if you're thinking about your target persona and their interactions on a daily basis, and imagine this, and the whole point of having this is you have it as a benchmark idea of what you think they would and how they would engage with social media content and social platforms, and then you tweak that as you go along. But so if you're thinking about your target audience, then you've got to think about, with your target audience, are you trying to increase brand awareness? Are you trying to generate sales? Are you trying to build a community? Because again, that all comes into the type of content that you're going to do for your target audience. And the reason why it's really important to understand your target audience is because if you're posting a piece of content in the evening because that's the only time you have to post, but actually you know your target audience would be searching for the likes of your brand or engaging with your type of content during the day or at the weekends, then you're missing a trick already, because you're missing out on that time to actually grab your audience's attention. To give you an example, if you are doing recipes, right, and you want to then post your content on Pinterest, you wouldn't necessarily be posting a recipe on Pinterest on a Wednesday lunchtime, unless you're trying to target people working from home who may be looking up quick hacks of recipes for lunch whilst working from home. Again, it's really understanding your target audience, which kind of nicely leads into number 2, platform personality. So the reason why I'm calling it platform personality is because each social media platform has a personality of its own in terms of content and also in terms of demographic. To use the example earlier with Pinterest, that Pinterest typically would be more ideation and scoping, and a lot of people use it for saving things for home renovations or recipes or seasonality. So if you're doing Halloween decorations or Christmas decorations, house hacks, those kind of thing. Whereas if you're thinking about LinkedIn, for example, that's more LinkedIn professionals, so professional networking, professional posting. Just to use those two examples, LinkedIn, you wouldn't necessarily be posting any content on the weekend, because who'd be searching on LinkedIn on a Saturday? However, I say that because if you then take that as an example and you were thinking back to number one around your target audience, you may think, well, actually, I'm trying to target entrepreneurs and people that have side hustles. And I know they may have the Monday scares. So they may be on LinkedIn on a Sunday night trying to think of different ways they can make money and how they can do other side hustles. And actually, a Sunday night would be perfect for your target audience. But going back into the personality of the platform, you need to think about the time of day. LinkedIn is a great example of where I think there's such a misconception. So many people say, only post on LinkedIn Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it needs to be 2 p.m. And like I said earlier, 2 p.m. to who, right? So one thing to bear in mind too, when you're talking about your target audience earlier and then your platform personality, is what geographical time zone you're thinking of targeting. So if, for example, you're a business in Australia and you want to be targeting people in the US, then 2 p.m. US time might be a good time. But again, what's the 2 p.m. thing? And I say this because I've seen this a lot recently around 2 p.m. being the best utilized time. Another thing that goes into platform personalities is the content type per platform. So for example, posting reels, we know at the moment have really high engagement on Instagram, and reels really under 90 seconds are getting the best engagement. Whereas platforms like Facebook, you may want to do longer form content and have more interaction and polls and voting, or getting people to send a message, or you may tell a more of a brand story, or you may be sharing a blog. Again, all the different content types per platform. Another thing to think about with the platform personalities and the content type is also your content frequency. So if you're only posting once a month on one platform or once a month on all platforms, what engagement are you expecting to get? Because you're not appearing enough for your target audience. And also the algorithms for each of those platforms are not going to serve you up to your audience because it's not getting enough information and engagement and data about your content. So again, when you're thinking about the platforms and your content quality, your content frequency, your content themes, all of this needs to be planned out. And I'm going to relate this back to point number one, which is your target audience. So when you're thinking about all those platforms, content type and frequency and themes, it's what is your target audience expecting to see from you? Or what would they engage with from you? So again, you may want to balance off if you're doing your brand awareness stuff or if you're doing your more harder sales driven content. And all of that, just remember, there is still a human at the end of that content. And the final one, number 3, is optimizing times. So once you start posting a bit more, you'll be able to then look at your data and understand the best time of day to post, and you'll see your engagement, so your shares, your likes, your saves, your comments, etc. And you'll be able to then optimize your posting time based on that. So if, for example, you're posting and you're not really seeing a good time of day, so say, for example, you start posting and you're fresh off and you don't know when your best time is, and you're still trying to establish your audience, you've got a rough idea, you've got a series of videos that you're going to release. Make a little note to yourself in your calendar of the time of day that you posted for each of those pieces of content. Time of day, actual physical day of the week, and test it and learn, right? And see the engagement. And then just tweak it even by a few hours to see, okay, what's the higher engagement? Or even notice your behavior of when you're going on those platforms. So there's lots of tools you can use for also seeing all this data. I would say, especially if you're starting out in the beginning, the best way of understanding those optimization times is actually within the native platforms. So for example, if you're using Facebook and Instagram, then Meta Business Suite is really, really good in the planner section to actually tell you this is when your audience is, this is a suggested time of day to post. And again, in TikTok, you can see your audience, how much they engage with your content straight away, where's the drop off. TikTok is one where it's really interesting. You may post something, you might get a high peak, and then a few weeks or a few days later, something gets picked up on a hashtag. So again, one to monitor. But something to bear in mind is that although you might say, okay, the best time of day we're going to post on YouTube is a Wednesday at 5 p.m. and then we're going to post on Pinterest at 6 p.m. on a Saturday, or whatever it is, you need to review those ongoing, because the time of day will differ slightly. Your audience may change, behaviors may change. There may be a difference in terms of the time of year that you're posting, of people's behavior change. So for example, in the UK, it gets really dark in winter. So actually people are spending less time outside in the evenings and more time probably scrolling through social media. Again, if that was your target audience. One thing to bear in mind is there is quite a few social scheduling tools you can use to help with scheduling your content. Now, as much as they are very helpful with being able to utilize pre-scheduling content and so therefore reaching that target audience at that time that you want, your optimum time, I would say be careful in the beginning, because especially if you're doing a lot of testing, you may want to do it natively in the platform first, see the platform metrics, see those engagements, and then use those platforms. Some of those platforms don't tell you the best time of day to post, so you need to be checking that within the actual social platform. So as a wrap up, the best time of day depends on your audience and your business. What's your industry? What's the platform that you're using? What's the objective of your content? What's the content type that you're doing? What's the frequency? All of those come into consideration to make it your personalized time of day. So don't follow those infographics and guides for best time of day, because I'm telling you now, that's not going to give you your best time of day. But thank you for joining me for another episode of Engage and Thrive with your host Taelon, and see you next week.